On the eve of the wedding, I received flowers from my fiancé, but the greeting card read, Hazel, wishing you happiness. My name is Grace, and no one has ever called me Hazel. I confronted my fiancé, but he just tossed me a message from the vendor. The vendor simply put the wrong card in. Can you stop overthinking it? I brushed it off as a joke and posted about it on my social media post. With the caption, turns out the man I'm marrying already has another Hazel in his life. A student's mother immediately liked the post. Immediately after, a student sent me an even more exquisite bouquet. The card read, Grace, I love you. I immediately called Brenda. Brenda, Marcus is cheating on me. I'm canceling the wedding. The call ended before I could spread the news to family and friends. Marcus rushed over, a look of impatience on his face as he questioned me. Grace, are you ever going to stop? I'm marrying you as promised. What are you making a fuss about now? I threw the flowers and Hazel's greeting card in front of him. How do you explain this? Marcus's eyes narrowed as he looked at the bouquet a student had given me. Grace, it's not what you think. This was just a gift for an old friend. Brenda rushed over when she heard the news, trying to persuade me. Grace, Marcus has already explained the bouquet to us. It's just flowers for an old friend he hasn't seen in years. Are you going to ruin your 10-year relationship with Marcus over such a small thing? Marcus also handed his phone to me. Check it yourself. Hazel is a good girl. You can't just throw dirt on her name. 10 years of our relationship. I stood by Marcus as he went from a poor guy, bankrupt with colossal debts, to the Marcus he is today. What if it truly was just a misunderstanding? What's more, I touched my flat belly, where his child was growing. Ultimately, I relented. Block her contact, and I won't pursue this any further. The wedding is still on for tomorrow. Marcus didn't hesitate to block her contact, the woman holding the child. On the wedding day, as I extended my hand, waiting for Marcus to place the ring on it, I heard the sound of piano music coming from Marcus's phone. Curiously, I looked over. Marcus's phone always used the default ringtone. Even when I later changed my ringtone to music I loved, he ended up disabling it every time, simply because he said he didn't like it. Then, without hesitation, threw the ring to the ground and pulled out his phone. The call connected in less than 2 seconds. Marcus then turned and prepared to leave. I grabbed his arm. Marcus, this is our wedding. Where are you going? The wedding's off for now. Poppy is sick. Poppy? My student from class? Hazel's daughter. I clung desperately to Marcus's hand. Don't go. If you leave now, this is truly over between us. Before I could finish my sentence, Marcus abruptly shook off my hand with such force that I was caught off guard. He violently threw me off the stage, which was about half a meter high. There was a thud. Pain slowly spread from all around, reaching my heart. Marcus finally turned back, a flicker of alarm crossing his face. Grace! He instinctively took 2 steps toward me, his face filled with panic. At that moment, the melodious piano music played again. A look of dilemma crossed Marcus's face. I reached out my hand. Marcus! Marcus gritted his teeth, then finally turned and hurried out of the grand ballroom. Poppy has a fever, and Hazel will be scared alone. The ambulance is on its way. I watched his retreating figure, my body unable to support itself any longer. I collapsed directly onto the ground. Blood slowly soaked through my white wedding gown. Grace! When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. Brenda sat by my hospital bed, her eyes swollen and red, her gaze heavy on my belly. My heart sank. My family knew I was pregnant. Marcus, does he know? Brenda asked cautiously. I gently stroked my belly and shook my head. There's no need for him to know anymore. With that, I picked up the phone by my pillow and quietly scheduled an abortion procedure for a week later. Seeing this, Brenda was aghast. Grace, don't be impulsive. This is both your child. No matter how angry you are, you should discuss it with him. Maybe he had an unavoidable reason. A reason? He might have countless reasons, but I couldn't bear it anymore. That year, I excitedly planned a trip for 3 months. I waited at the airport for 6 whole hours, only to receive a text message from him. An urgent corporate matter came up, and I have to handle it personally. We'll definitely make up for the trip next time. On my birthday, I made plans with him a week in advance, but that day I was waiting by the cake until past midnight. He only came home later, smelling of alcohol and exhausted, collapsing straight into bed. The next day, he just impatiently said, "It won't happen again." Even on the day my father, Henry, was hospitalized, I called him, crying, But he only told me he was tied up with client dinners. 10 years. I kept waiting for him to have time, for him to be less busy, for him to pay off his debts, for his company to get on track. I spent 10 years waiting for his next time, and later, I understood all his pressures and unavoidable situations, telling myself he was striving for our future. I picked up Brenda's phone. A prominent red string of missed calls glowed on the screen. For whole hours. 699 missed calls. Marcus had never picked up. My wedding, which I had anticipated for 10 years. Yet, at the most crucial moment, for another woman's child, he unhesitatingly abandoned me, bleeding profusely. I closed my eyes, and my tears finally broke free. My fingers trembling, I resolutely pressed the confirmation button for the procedure. Just then, Marcus called. His voice was thick with exhaustion. "Grace, please stop letting your mother call me. Poppy just broke her fever and finally fell asleep. Don't wake them up. Don't you know that every time you call, Hazel cries and begs me to go find you? It's not easy for Hazel, raising a child alone. Can't you be a little more understanding? Also, postponing the wedding was my decision alone. Blame me if you must. None of this has anything to do with Hazel. She's innocent." My tears fell one by one onto the white hospital bed. Marcus's call, after 4 hours, was entirely for Hazel, but I was hurt too. Yet, he hadn't thought to show me an ounce of concern from beginning to end. Marcus paused, then continued. "About the wedding. We'll reschedule it once Poppy feels better. Don't worry, I promise to marry you. And I will." Tears welled in my eyes, but I let out a soft laugh. "Marcus." My voice was as calm as ice. "There won't be a wedding. We are completely over. This time, I'm the one who's done with you." Marcus's impatient voice came from the other end of the phone. "Grace, stop making a scene. If I don't marry you, who else would you marry? Everyone in Metro City knows you're mine. What kind of man do you think I'll look like if you do this?" He paused, his tone softening slightly. "Hazel and I are just old friends. You're just overthinking things and making everyone uncomfortable." Before he could finish, a soft, sleepy child's voice suddenly came from the other end of the phone. "Daddy." Marcus's voice abruptly cut off. The was hastily put down. Immediately after, Marcus, in a gentle, hushed voice, said, "Sweetie woke up? Daddy's here. Shh, let's be quiet and not wake Mommy." In that instant, I stood frozen, clutching my phone, as if all the blood in my veins had congealed. So he wasn't inherently cold and unfeeling, incapable of tenderness. It turned out he could speak with such doting care, as if afraid to disturb someone. It was just that this tenderness was never spared for me. 10 years of companionship had only earned me his sense of entitlement and impatience. Then, a faint rustling came from the other end of the phone. Hazel was waking up. I could almost clearly picture it, Marcus leaning over, carefully helping her up, the anxiousness and consideration in his eyes, a treatment I had never received. "Marcus, why are you still here?" Hazel's voice, soft and groggy from sleep, with a hint of well-timed apprehension, said, "Please go back." "Okay. I really don't want a mess. Grace to misunderstand me again. Don't move around. You're weak. Lie down a bit longer." Marcus's voice was so tender it could melt, every word piercing my ears like a needle. "I'll watch the child. You rest easy. Don't worry about a thing." He paused, his tone unexpectedly firm and accommodating. "As for Grace, you don't need to worry about her. What she thinks isn't important. I will never let anyone wrong you or the child. I'll take care of everything." The call had ended some time without me noticing. I lay on the hospital bed, as if all my strength had been drained. Only his words, "What she thinks isn't important," echoed repeatedly in my mind, tearing at me inch by inch. After being discharged, I saw off my worried Brenda and returned alone to the mansion, the marital home that once held all my hopes. Opening the door, I was surprised to see Marcus sitting on the living room carpet, patiently building building blocks with a little girl. I subconsciously glanced at the clock on the wall. Wednesday, exactly 10 a.m. This was the time for the unmissable weekly corporate meeting. Yet, he was here. Marcus looked up at the sound, a flicker of imperceptible panic in his eyes when he saw me. He then stood up and explained, "Grace, you're back? This is Hazel, an old friend of mine, and this is her daughter, Poppy. The child just recovered from her illness, and Hazel can't manage alone, so I brought them here to stay for a few days." His tone was deliberately casual, as if arranging a trivial matter. "Don't overthink it. My face was expressionless. The tears I should have shed, the pain my heart should have felt, had long since dried up and been exhausted on that cold hospital bed. Now, only the ashes of a dead silence remained. Marcus looked at my pale, silent face, as if suddenly remembering I was discharged today, and his voice held a trace of belated awkwardness. "Why didn't you tell me you were being discharged today? I would have sent the driver to pick you up." I shook my head, my voice calm and unwavering. "We're going our separate ways. There's no need to bother each other anymore. I'm just here today to pack my things." Hearing the words "going our separate ways," his face immediately darkened. He strode forward, grabbing my wrist with painful force. "Grace, how long are you going to keep this up? I told you Hazel is only staying temporarily. She will never threaten your position as Mrs. Marcus." "My position as Mrs. Marcus?" I softly repeated the words, as if hearing the most absurd joke in the world. My gaze passed over him, landing on the little girl hiding behind Hazel, shyly looking at me. In that moment, her weekly journals, which she'd handed to me, flashed clearly in my mind. My dad is a superhero. He always gives me unexpected surprises. We went on a picnic at the park with Daddy and Mommy. Daddy lifted me so high. It turned out that every weekend he told me he was working late or tied up with client dinners. He was actually being another child's father. That with the wrong card was never a misunderstanding. It was merely a warning from above. I looked at his hand tightly gripping my wrist. That warmth once made me long for him, but now I only felt a biting cold. Slowly, but with absolute determination, I broke free from his grasp. "Marcus." I looked up at the man I had loved for 10 years, my heart in ashes, every word clear. "Do you really think what I care about is that ridiculous Mrs. Marcus position anymore? You may not care about the Mrs. Marcus position, but what about your father?" Marcus's face was calm to the point of cruelty, his eyes devoid of any warmth. "Your father is still waiting for a matching lung donor. The surgery costs, the top medical team, the endless post-op recovery expenses. Besides me, who else can provide that for you instantly, unconditionally?" I looked at this man, both familiar and strange, my heart feeling as if it had been brutally pierced by an ice pick. Back when the Fu family collapsed overnight, his father committed suicide, and his mother suffered a mental breakdown from the shock. It was my father, Henry, who resolutely sold our ancestral home and half a lifetime savings to pay off his massive debts, pulling him out of despair. Even if our relationship was completely severed now, how could he use my father's life to blackmail me? "Marcus!" Intense rage and disappointment made me tremble. Without thinking, I raised my hand and slapped him hard. "You're so ungrateful." The crisp sound of the slap echoed in the empty living room. He tilted his head, his tongue probing his bleeding lip. When he turned back, his eyes held only cold indifference and a hint of mockery. "Grace, the reality is, only my money and my connections can save your father now." He took a step closer, his tall figure casting a suffocating shadow of oppression. "I'm asking you one last time, are you sure you want to leave?" In that moment, I felt as if I were in an ice cellar, frozen stiff from head to toe. I looked at the face that had captivated me for 10 years, now showing only calculating coldness. All my struggles and anger crumbled under his icy gaze. My father's pale, sickly face and faint breathing seemed to appear before me, becoming an invisible shackles around my neck. My fingers loosened, and the heavy suitcase slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a thud, shattering my last bit of dignity and hope. I stood frozen, my lips trembling, unable to utter another word. In this marital mansion I had meticulously decorated, I felt like an unwanted bystander, watching Marcus, Hazel, and the child play out their heartwarming family scene. He would naturally brush the stray hair from her ear, and she would laugh as she straightened his crooked tie. Every knowing glance exchanged, every casual brush of fingertips, silently mocked my existence. I finally understood, he wasn't inherently cold and unfeeling. It was just that all his attentiveness and passion had long been given to someone else. It wasn't that he couldn't. It was that he didn't love me. When once again accidentally broke the blessed charm bracelet Brenda had personally gotten for me from St. Jude's Chapel, the suppressed anger and despair made me lose control and push her away. The child tumbled to the floor and burst into tears. Hazel immediately rushed forward, shielding the child in her arms, her eyes filled with condemnation and grievance as she looked at me. That night, an edited video went viral online. Hashtags like hashtag evil stepmother shoves child and hashtag wealthy heirs wife abusing a child quickly topped the trending topics. My hands trembling, I opened the comments. "This woman looks like a villainess. Stealing someone's husband and daring to bully a child. She's supposedly an elementary school teacher. She must be hitting students at school too. The school should fire her. Each vicious comment was like a poisoned dagger, continually piercing my flesh. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My chest felt tight, and I could barely breathe. Just then, the school called. Grace, I know your character. You're not the person the internet says you are. But the public pressure is too immense right now, and the school is in a difficult position. So, since you're newly married, why don't you take some time off to rest at home until things blow over? Hanging up the phone, endless grievance and fury burned wildly in my chest. I touched my belly. I couldn't just get rid of this child so easily. Marcus. Hazel. I won't let you off lightly. You owe me, and you'll have to pay it back. The moment hot tea splashed on the back of my hand, my skin immediately burned with a sharp sting. This was just one of Hazel's countless accidents. I kept a straight face, not even having a chance to speak. Marcus already frowned, his voice laced with obvious impatience. Grace, don't think your cheap tricks can frame Hazel. I've already given you the title of Mrs. Marcus. Aren't you satisfied? Satisfied? What? Marcus title? It was just a self-deceiving term Marcus used. In that moment, all pretense shattered completely. I looked directly at Hazel and said coldly, "What exactly do you want?" From an angle Marcus couldn't see, Hazel gave me a triumphant smile. "Ms. Grace, I'm the one Marcus always wanted to marry. If hadn't been afraid of me enduring hardship with him, the current Mrs. Marcus's position would never have been yours." I trembled all over, as if struck by lightning, and whirled towards Marcus, my voice uncontrollably shaking. "Is that true? The person you originally intended to marry was her?" Marcus's face darkened. He was silent for a moment, eventually avoiding my gaze and whispering, "Grace, although I don't love you, I will keep my promise to marry you." My heart felt as if it had suddenly plunged into an ice cave, or been brutally crushed by something. Faced with this extreme pain, I suddenly laughed. "Fine, Marcus. Since you're so eager to compensate her, why don't we just cancel our wedding? You and she can have a grand wedding. Satisfy her, and satisfy all your guilt." I stared intently at his suddenly constricted pupils, every word falling clear and distinct. "As for us, we'll just get our marriage certificate. All I want is the legal title of Mrs. Marcus. You can at least give me that, right?" Marcus froze. He instinctively looked at Hazel, a flicker of struggle in his eyes. Finally, under my icy gaze, he reluctantly nodded. "All right, as you wish." The next day, Marcus and I walked out of City Hall, my face expressionless, the bright red marriage certificate in my hand burning hot. Returning to the suffocating mansion, a wild idea took shape in my mind. While was taking a nap with her daughter, I carefully took a strand of hair with a follicle from her dressing table. A few days later, I managed to get a sample from Marcus as well. During the days I waited for the test results, I wandered like a ghost through this opulent cage. When the DNA test report finally showed exclusion of biological parentage, I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. But this wasn't enough. I also secretly installed hidden cameras in the living room and dining room. Every late night, when the entire mansion fell silent, I would lock my door and curl up alone in front of the computer screen. On the screen, Marcus gently brushed stray hair from Hazel's forehead. She smiled as she fed him a piece of fruit, and he naturally wrapped an arm around her waist, whispering and laughing. The tenderness and affection he had never shown me now felt like the sharpest blades, slowly torturing my heart. A powerful wave of nausea surged, and I clamped my hand over my mouth, my stomach churning, only able to dry heave at the loving figures on the screen. Soon, it was the day Marcus hosted the wedding for Hazel. On the wedding day, Marcus booked the entire grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like stars, flowers carpeted the corridor, and the scene was utterly luxurious. Marcus handled everything personally, inviting almost all the prominent figures in Metro City, business partners, so-called friends, and even Hazel's daughter's classmates. The atmosphere was as lively as a true wedding of the century. I sat alone in the most inconspicuous corner, watching it all. Hazel, in a custom wedding gown, her floor-length veil and diamond-studded skirt almost blinding under the lights. She was clinging to Marcus's arm, a radiant smile on her face I had never seen before. And he, my husband, dressed impeccably in a suit, his expression gentle, was murmuring something to her. It was truly obvious whether there was love or not. To me, he always said, "Next time, Grace, I'm really busy, but now, for Hazel, he could stop all his work, book the entire grand ballroom, and organize a wedding every girl dreams of. My heart felt like it was being sliced repeatedly by an ice-encased blade, cold and painful. Yet, my face remained blank. I just clutched the slightly cool USB drive in my pocket even tighter, as the master of ceremonies emotionally announced from the stage, "Now, let us welcome today's most beautiful bride, and the most important man in her life." The lights softened throughout the grand ballroom. Music swelled romantically. Hazel gazed at him with a smile, and Marcus turned his head slightly, his eyes fixed on her face with such focus, as if she truly were the wife he had loved for years. At that very moment, I slowly stood up and walked directly to the main control panel. Some noticed me, their gazes surprised, perhaps in their eyes. I was merely the so-called Mrs. Marcus, long out of the picture and insignificant, who shouldn't be present in this aura of happiness. But I walked steadily, one step at a time. Standing at the control panel, I watched the slideshow of their carefully selected wedding photos playing on the screen, Marcus with his arm around Hazel's waist, she smiling as she nestled in his embrace. Then, I gently pulled out the projector cable and inserted my USB drive. The lights in the grand ballroom dimmed for a moment, then brightened again. On the giant screen, a marriage certificate suddenly appeared. Holders, Marcus and Grace. Crystal clear surveillance footage was projected in parallel, in the living room late at night. Marcus and Hazel embracing tightly, kissing passionately. In a corner of the dining room, he gently pressed her against the wall, his fingertips ambiguously caressing her cheek. There was even footage of Marcus holding Poppy, with Hazel smiling beside them, and the child's clear voice from off-screen saying, "Daddy's the best." Segment by segment, frame by frame, it was all irrefutable evidence of their clandestine intimacy and family-like closeness behind my back. The ballroom fell into immediate silence, then erupted into disbelieving gasps and whispers. Parents hurriedly covered their children's eyes. I took the master of ceremonies microphone, my voice as calm as a judgment, echoing through the suddenly silent grand ballroom. "Marcus, when you used my money and my father's connections to host this wedding for your mistress and her daughter, did you ever, for a single moment, consider that I am your legal and only wife?" The entire grand ballroom erupted in uproar. Hazel's face instantly drained of all color. She instinctively gripped Marcus's arm, trembling all over, and he suddenly turned to look at me, his eyes for the first time showing unprepared shock and panic. Hazel's face was completely bloodless. She shrieked, "Turn it off! Turn it off now!" Her carefully maintained composure and gentleness were shredded in that moment, leaving only profound humiliation and terror. "Ms. Hazel," my gaze shifted to her, my voice growing colder. "Wearing a wedding gown bought by another woman's husband, hosting a wedding that isn't yours. Can you really sleep at night?" These words were like the loudest slap, hitting Hazel's face hard. She almost fainted, mortified and wishing to disappear. The entire grand ballroom immediately fell into dead silence. Then, like an exploding oil pot, gasps and whispers erupted. Media and guests alike raised their phones, blinding camera flashes going off one after another. "Grace, you're insane." Marcus's composure completely shattered. He violently flung Hazel's hand away, towering rage and disbelief rolling in his eyes, and strode onto the stage, his hand raised high. I smiled defiantly. "I have something even crazier." Just then, the heavy doors of the grand ballroom were suddenly thrown open from the outside. I looked at the newcomers and said to Marcus, "Look, your comeuppance has arrived." This utterly luxurious wedding ultimately ended in a farce, with the groom taken away by the police and the bride collapsing onto the ground, as was led away in handcuffs, under suspicion of major financial crimes. Camera flashes once again flickered wildly throughout the grand ballroom. Hazel had long since collapsed to the ground. The wedding gown Marcus had meticulously tailored for her now stained with dust and tears, spread messily across the cold floor. The child beside her was crying helplessly, tugging at her skirt and wailing heartbrokenly, "Mommy, I want Daddy. Daddy, come back." A child of similar age hesitantly tried to offer a tissue, but was quickly pulled back by a parent, who whispered a warning, "Don't go near her. Her mother isn't decent. You might learn bad habits." Guests nearby cast sidelong glances, their eyes like sharp needles, openly directed at the disheveled mother and daughter, their pointing fingers and whispers filled with scorn and disdain. As for me, I merely walked through the wreckage with a blank expression, heading straight for the exit. "Grace!" Hazel's hoarse voice suddenly came from behind, laced with a breaking sob. "Are you satisfied now? Are you satisfied now?" You destroyed me. You destroyed all of us. My steps faltered slightly, and I turned around. My gaze calmly swept over her tear-streaked, smudged face, her dirted wedding gown, and the disgusted looks of those around her who tried to avoid her. I didn't say a word, just a cold glance, then turned and continued to leave. From beginning to end, it was never her I hated. What I hated was Marcus, who wanted my family's status to save him from ruin, and my tenderness to fill his emptiness. It was the utterly selfish man who bound me with marriage and used my love to serve him, and was merely a truth-telling mirror, waking me up completely from a decade-long illusion of self-deceiving love. As expected, a new storm of cyberbullying quickly erupted online. The accounts that once cursed me as vicious and improper now turned their guns, eager to tear Hazel apart. The other woman deserves it. Scheming woman gets her karma. The child isn't innocent either. I pulled a corner of my mouth upwards slightly, but there was no hint of a smile in my eyes. My fingers calmly scrolled the screen, taking screenshot after screenshot. The accounts that once wanted to tear me apart had now turned their fire, rushing at Hazel with the same fervor. They never verified, never thought, merely greedily consumed the next guilty party, relishing the thrill of judging others from the moral high ground. Their love and hatred were so cheap. Yesterday they could cheer for you. Today they could stomp you into an abyss. I understood that cyberbullying was never about truth, and even less about justice. It was just a collective emotional outpouring, a cowardly frenzy hidden behind screens. They didn't need a real person, but a symbol to bear all their malice. It used to be me, and now it was Hazel, and our real pain, struggles, and lives, in their eyes, were merely a drama for their amusement. Even more tragically, those who cursed Hazel today, saying the other woman deserves to die, might have been envying her wealthy marriage luck just yesterday. Their values were like fickle and easily swayed grass, always bending with the changing winds, completely without substance. I saved all the screenshots, the surging malice that once targeted me, and now the relentless, repetitive, irrational malice attacking her. Then, with a single click, I bundled it all and sent it to my lawyer. Mr. Clark, this is evidence of a new round of cyberbullying. The infringing parties are clear, and the content involves defamation and personal attacks. I paused, then added, including all records of the initial cyberbullying against me. Those should be added to the lawsuit as well. Don't miss a single one. I saw Marcus again at the defendant's stand in the courthouse. He was wearing a wrinkled prison uniform, his hair disheveled, a far cry from his former spirited appearance. His gaze, a complex mix of shock, resentment, and a futile glimmer of hope, fell upon me. As for me, I sat calmly in the plaintiff's stand, my face devoid of expression, listening as my lawyer meticulously detailed his offenses: marital infidelity, asset transfer, bigamy, each accusation supported by irrefutable evidence. When the lawyer clearly stated, during the plaintiff's pregnancy, the defendant maintained an illicit relationship with the third party, Hazel, and repeatedly assisted her in asset transfers, Marcus's body suddenly trembled. He uncontrollably stood up, his gaze fixed on my belly, until bailiffs forcibly pushed him back into his seat. Finally, in the face of overwhelming evidence, the judge solemnly ruled, divorce granted. All assets under Marcus's name to be awarded to my side as compensation, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison for bigamy. As the bailiffs escorted him past me, he suddenly struggled violently, his bloodshot eyes, filled with a last shred of hope, fixed on my belly, his voice hoarse. The child, our child. I gently curved the corner of my mouth, meeting his desperate gaze. My voice calm but chilling. Aborted. The very day your wedding with Hazel ended. It was done. Marcus seemed to have all his strength instantly drained, then erupted into a frantic roar. Grace, how could you be so cruel? That was my child. How dare you? I leaned forward slightly, my voice so soft only he could hear, yet every word cut like a knife. Cruel? Where were you when I was pregnant and you pushed me off the stage, bleeding nonstop? You were with another woman's child. Where were you when I was pregnant and Hazel accidentally hurt me again and again? You were telling me not to make a fuss. Marcus, search your conscience and ask yourself, do you deserve any of this? Oh, I forgot. A person like you has no conscience at all. You don't deserve to be a husband, much less a father. Today's outcome is what you deserve. He seemed utterly broken. All his roars abruptly ceased, leaving only a dead silence of despair, and he was finally powerlessly dragged out of the courthouse by the bailiffs. Watching the direction in which he disappeared, My eyes uncontrollably welled up slightly. That child, the child whose tiny features I had imagined countless times, for whom I had secretly planned a future, ultimately became the most painful price of this absurd marriage. I quickly blinked away the moisture in my eyes, refusing to allow myself to wallow in the pain of that loss any longer. Just then, my lawyer stood up, a relieved smile on his face, and extended his hand to me. Ms. Grace, congratulations. You are free, completely rid of this unpleasant relationship. I took a deep breath, suppressing the swirling emotions, and offered a relieved but slightly tired smile, firmly shaking his hand. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Getting rid of a scoundrel certainly calls for congratulations. Although a trace of unspeakable bitterness lingered in my heart, I knew that stepping out of this door, a true new beginning awaited me. I straightened my back and walked step by step out of the oppressive courthouse doors. Outside, Brenda and Henry were eagerly waiting for me, their eyes filled with both heartache and relief. I looked up at the sky. The sunlight was a bit dazzling but warmed my face. Everything could finally begin anew. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about this story, feel free to share them in the comments section. Here is Roses and Love, sharing stories about marriage and women every day. See you tomorrow.